Commissioner, I'm ready when you are. It's rolling.
All right, thank you. Welcome, everyone. We convened the meeting of the Iron County Commission of the 25th day of February 2019. At this time, Chad Dotson, our county attorney, will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then Commissioner Cousins will give the opening prayer, the invocation.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our Father in heaven, as we gather this morning in this county commission meeting, we express our gratitude unto Thee for the many wonderful blessings Thou hast bestowed upon us. We're so very grateful to be living in such favorable circumstances in this wonderful county and the beautiful valleys that we are able to live in. We're grateful for the freedoms we enjoy in this country and those who protect our freedoms. We're very grateful for our military personnel and servicemen and women, and pray that Thou would be with and bless and protect them. We express our gratitude for our county staff and employees and those first responders who keep us safe. We ask that Thou would watch over and protect them and be with them at all times. We express gratitude for our moisture that we've received and for the abundant snowpack that we have on our mountains, and that this will sustain life and crops through this next year. We pray that we may continue to receive those things that we need to sustain life and to be happy in this wonderful county. We pray that Thou would be with us this day as we discuss and deliberate the items needed to run this county. And we appreciate those who are in attendance, these county individuals who taken their time to be here and to listen to these discussions. We pray that Thy Spirit will be with us to guide and direct us in our decisions. We acknowledge Thy hand in all things and ask that Thou continue to be with us throughout this day and throughout this week. And we do offer this prayer humbly in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you both very much. We have, excuse me, got a little congestion. We have the minutes of the February 11th meeting, 2019, that I would entertain a motion for approval, unless there's any discussion.
I would move to approve the minutes of February 11th, 2019.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the Iron County Commission minutes of February 11th, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We go on to reports. First of all, we have clerk.
Okay.
John.
Oh, let's see. Where's my paper? Oh, here. There's two each. Good morning. There's one from the end of 2018 and then so far in 2019.
I guess we got the right one. Okay, we're good.
One's a lot more written on than the other.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we finished a 2018 budget at 97% for clerk and 88% for elections. There were a few line items that were over. On clerk, I've kind of been squeezing this number over the last few years, but I was over on postage, and I used a purple highlighter, which made it almost illegible, so I kind of changed that. And then we had a couple that were close. And then dues and fees and permits is another.
I can see it. 140 watt? No, we understand.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, and so
Potential that we couldn't read it.
I know that. Well, I used the highlighter, and I'm like, holy cow, that's dark.
Yes,
So, yeah, that's right. Just mark it a little bit harder. That was the worst number on the page too. But and then under elections, we were at 88%, and we did have the salary and wages over And the reason for that is with the busy election, we actually ran out of comp time and had to and started paying overtime. But that came in at 103% for that line item, but 88% overall. So far, the 2019 budget is on track. That's the other page. Dan is good enough to include a few other items on there. I often make some purchases under non-departmental, but that's kind of peripheral. The big news, though, is that on March 16th, Chief Deputy Cindy is retiring, and we've appointed Chanel Best to be the new Chief Deputy in her absence, and we will interview on Thursday for a replacement Deputy Clerk. We had, and Adrian told me we would. I was a little skeptical, but we had 45 applicants,
Really?
and we whittled it down to 7 who will be interviewed on Thursday. But other than that, we're doing pretty good. We're doing all right, Commissioner.
So on the postage, John.
Yes.
So we obviously probably meter that, right? We have a
Correct.
metering machine and all that. Because
Yeah.
I know with my business, we bought a whole bunch of stamps before they went up 5 cents. But
Right.
I guess we can't do that in the county probably. But
Right. And we do have a metering machine that is shared, and we have an account there.
So are we, I know, like for instance, the water board, the water district, they
Yeah.
started doing a lot more emails as far as billing and things. Is there some things we can look at in your department where we can start? I haven't sent a bill in
A physical bill.
physical bill for a long time. I mean, email is so wonderful. I mean, is there some things we could do to cut costs on postage?
So some of that's out of our hands, and some of it isn't. We have the Encode under which we do the billing, and that has some capabilities, and we've been kind of moving forward, but not fast. But it's definitely been on the radar. We've also had, and there's been talk and investigations of auto bill pay. And a few of those things to maybe cut out some of the credit card fees and the like. So
I know that you
Nicole.
could talk to Mandy in the district.
Yeah,
she's doing all the auto pay, and she's really
yeah.
she loves it. It
Yeah.
saves her a lot of
To
time.
a degree, it's out of our hands because we're subject to the system, but maybe to whatever degree we can, we'll look into that. So thank you.
Just a thought.
It's a good one. And that's about all I have for you.
Okay, very good. Nothing as sure as change, is there?
Yes.
So you got Cindy retiring after blank years.
Somebody forgot to find out exactly how many years. Right now, she's down there yelling at her computer screen, but I'm pretty sure. Do you know, Jeannie, how many years? Is it 30?
Really?
So she's been with us for a long time. I think I was in middle school when she started. So, all right, thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, Adrian, welcome. Glad to have you with us this morning. HRN Public Defender.
Yes, good morning, Commissioners. I've got a quarterly report here for the Human Resources Department for the county. To begin with the finalization of the 2018 budget, the HR department was within budget. No issues for 2018, and continues to be within budget for the established with the established figures for 2019. And again, don't anticipate any issues or concerns there. A lot of our time is spent, obviously, with hiring and recruiting, and just making sure that things are running the best it possibly can in terms of personnel for the county. So just a quick update in terms of what's been done over the past quarter there. Since the last report, we've posted, interviewed, and hired for the following positions: a full-time victim advocate for the sheriff, part-time data entry clerk for the Council on Aging, a part-time assistant cook for the Council on Aging, a full-time deputy recorder for the recorder's office, full-time DMV title and registration tech for the assessor, full-time landfill tech for the landfill, full-time patrol deputy for the sheriff, a full-time deputy 1 attorney for the attorney's office, and 2 full-time corrections deputies for corrections, and also a full-time communications specialist for tourism. So it's, in terms of hiring and recruiting, it's been a little bit busier in terms of the number of positions that we've filled, but that's a rundown. Currently, we're also in the process of finalizing and hiring for the full-time videographer, graphic designer. The interviews have actually been completed, and actually we're submitting for final approval today the name for your consideration. Same thing with a part-time bailiff for the sheriff. We've got that on the agenda for today. And then, as John mentioned, we're also we've got interviews scheduled this week for his opening is for the full-time deputy clerk due to the changes in his office. We're also currently working on advertising and recruiting for full-time corrections deputies. We're building a current roster. We have multiple positions open there, which has been discussed on occasion. We're just continuing to kind of work from behind. We got close to catching up there for a minute, and now we've got multiple positions that we're trying to get filled again. We also have a part-time medical tech in corrections that we're looking to fill because we had moved that part-time person over to a full-time deputy position recently. And we also are currently, we've got a job posting that closes here in the next, I think, in the next week, depending on if there's any changes there, but a full-time building inspector, zoning officer, which we have had a number of applications come in for. Yeah,
that's good to hear. Last time we had a hard time getting anybody.
Yeah. So we had a couple more come over over the weekend as well, but I haven't had a chance to review those. But at least there's some options there for us to look at and consider. Some other points of interest. I always kind of like to track the employee turnover ratio, and with 2018 being concluded, for the year, that number ended up being 12.28%. Which is still very, very healthy. For comparison, in 2017, that ratio was 10.73. So up slightly, but well within a healthy range. And as a reminder, in 2016, that was 16.38%. So you can kind of see how it's trending a little bit. Continue to trend very well with the workers' comp claims. Knock on wood on those, but had a good year. We haven't had our rating come out yet. I expected to have that, and maybe it's available and I just missed it, but I got thinking this morning that I haven't had a chance to review that, but I expect that to come down a tick, which helps in terms of it's a major component in terms of our premium that we pay for the year. So I'll review that, and I might shoot you an email with an update on that, because that is something that correlates with a large expense for the county. But again, happy with kind of how things are trending, getting good support and cooperation from the departments in terms of the documentation of incidents and accidents, reviewing those things, trying to keep those things at a minimum, because again, in the end, it does affect us on in terms of a dollar amount. There's currently one unemployment claim open with the county. I'd consider that satisfactory with the number of employees that we have. Again, that's another thing that we get very good cooperation. I think we work very well with the department heads and the supervisors to make sure that our policies and procedures are followed, to where we can protect ourselves and just be fair and transparent in terms of terminations that occur, employment changes, so that we don't, so that we can keep unemployment claims at a minimum. I think we're being successful with that. So by all reports, the open enrollment insurance meetings for 2018 went very well. I've heard from a number of employees. Betsy gave me kept me updated. Betsy in the HR department, Carrie in the auditor's office, they both did a great job, as well as our Gallagher, our broker reps, to help us work through that process and that transition. We made a lot of changes with insurance this year, but by all accounts, everything went really well, went smooth, and really happy with it. The employee performance evaluations, just a quick report on those. We do those at the end of each year, and all departments were accounted for. I'm satisfied with the number of evaluations that came in. I've entered and tracked that data, and I also will have. That's another thing I'll track over time to kind of watch some trends, and I'll have more information available if anybody wants me to send that data once I finalize the compiling of it. A recent change, we're working with IT, and actually it went live for a minute, but I think we're still working on a few changes in terms of an online application process. I think we're going to fine tune that a little bit, but that's something that's in the works. That's just going to provide, previously we required a written application. That's still an option. We want to keep that as an option. But with the way the world goes nowadays, and just the trends of the industry, an online application process is important. It's only going to help us, with a number of recruiting and hiring practices. So that's in the works.
I think you'll find total support from this commission on that.
Right. Yeah. So, and IT's been great. It wasn't very long after I talked to Jared about it, and within weeks we had, something to at least review. And we did. The only question there is I think it went live before we had a chance to review it, but we've addressed that, I think, and like I say, just a couple little tweaks and adjustments that we want in terms of. Feedback from me and Betsy that, Betsy usually does that initial review, tracks all the incoming. She's really good to keep track of that and keep me updated. So we're going to have some input and some feedback on that. Right now, for 2019, really just working on scheduling some applicable, something that hopefully, some valuable HR training on topics for supervisors and department heads, some risk management things that we want to schedule out during the year, and also some things to move forward with the employee wellness training, where we have some funds budgeted for the year, and we've addressed and talked about some ideas with our insurance people. They've got some valuable feedback that will help kind of guide us and steer us in the right direction there, so that we can make best use of those funds. And then in terms of HR, those are like the major points that I wanted to report on. Unless you have any questions or anything to follow up with, I'll just move into the public defender report.
On the list of new hires that you gave us, would you just review the ones that aren't backfills?
Yes, I should have noted that, Commissioner. But the only one, as in terms of all of those positions that run down, they're all backfill positions. They're not new positions. It's just as a result of natural turnover, except for, as you may remember, the videographer, graphic designer was a new position that was approved for the year, where where it's my understanding that there was an adjustment made within the advertising budget for tourism to offset and to give them more in-house control. But again, so we kind of moved dollars around in creating that position, but wanted it to be budget neutral. But in reviewing everything else on this list, everything else is backfill.
Okay, well, that's good. Backfill plus budget neutral. That's good.
I kind of want to maybe plug the departments. I mean, I think we do know that we're in somewhat of a growth cycle. I hear this a lot from department heads, is just that we're, and I think they're to be commended in terms of the elected officials, the department heads, is, even supervise, those second line seems like we're doing more with not necessarily less, but more with the same. And I do think that there's some leadership here that's to be commended for every time the workload increases, they're not coming and asking, necessarily for more personnel all the time. And I think, things maybe get busier, but I do think there's, people that are willing, to take that workload and just kind of knowing that it can kind of ebb and flow a little bit. But yeah, we don't create new positions. It's very rare. But even sometimes when it might be justified, but I think people just step to the plate. And again, right now, I think I see that with people just doing more with less, and so on some occasions. So doing a good job with that. Any other questions or? Okay. As a second part of my report, just as an update, during 2018, just as part of some compliance with the AOC request, I've kind of been absorbed into just an extra layer of as in terms of review and supervision for the public defender. And Lori is worked really well. She's excellent to communicate. She communicates with me almost every day in terms of just everything that's going. In terms of approval and just keeping me in the loop of everything, so that there is, so that we're adhering to those requirements, and I think it's going well. Lori continues to be the best point of contact for, in terms of the information and kind of how things are progressing. But again, in terms of the extra layer and just an oversight and supervision, I'm fulfilling that to the best of my ability with my other responsibilities. But in terms of the reporting, I can give you the handouts, and then I'm just going to have Lori, with your approval, I'll just have Lori come up and maybe give a brief summary for the quarter in terms of the public defender. Really think that's probably the best way forward for us.
That would be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Lori. Good to
Hey,
have
good
you with
morning,
us.
everyone. So can I keep that? Thank you. All right. All right. So what you have there to start off with, the first two sheets are the 2018 budgets just on district court expenses and conflict. So everything is well within budget, in addition to what Dan Jessen, our county auditor, hands out. I just kind of keep it dialed in a little bit more so that you can see what cases and where the expenses went. And then, so we're in budget for 2018 on the public defender. But coming into 2019, and I think one of the reasons that it's been necessary for me to keep tethered to this is well, before I do that, let me just tell you that those next three reports, the district court expenses, the conflict, and I said conflict, but that's technically training, and I apologize that didn't get changed. Just showing what we've spent so far in the first couple of months, where those expenses are concerned on the public defender. So those are really just informative for you. But in December, we had Dale Sessions, who's just done excellent work for us and helped us, as you all well know, keep that appeals budget under control. The state got involved, and the Supreme Court made a decision to maintain a roster for appeals. And they made anybody that wanted to be on the appeals roster fill out an application. And no one in this area was selected, and Dale did submit an application. I think Matt Carling submitted an application. In the South, the only person that even is on the roster is a gentleman in St. George that is rumored, I don't know how accurate it is, to be charging a minimum of $15,000 per case. So what that means to the county is it could potentially means a dramatic increase in budget. So we've talked to Joanna Landau, who is the director of the Indigent Defense Commission. And right now she's got, and forgive me, I don't have my notes here, but one of the counties up there is willing to do appellate work for the different counties. And she's going to say that it's going to average anybody about $7,000 an appeal case. So I've talked at length with Commissioner Cousins, who's been great to get involved with the relationships that he has in place throughout the state. We've got the good news is they did reopen that process for appeals roster and application. So Dale Sessions has now resubmitted an application. They have told us that he can work out his contract through the end of March, so we don't have to, so we're kind of in a little bit of a holding pattern through the end of March. We're hoping that he will be approved this second go round and that we'll be able to maintain that contract and then recontract with him beginning April 1st. I know that's something that he would like to do.
Yeah.
And we just are really proud of the work that he's done.
While you're there, is there any guidelines or regulation? It seems like they shouldn't be able to just have a flat fee. Especially 15,000 just seems so exorbitant. I mean,
I think the thing that I feel passionately about, I know that you would feel passionately about, Commissioner Cousins feels passionately about, is why would we take our county funds and send them outside of our county to contract or employ other people? I mean, it doesn't seem fair. They have been listening to us, and hopefully, it won't be an issue. I do foresee that even though our contract for appeals, which with Scott Garrett's help at the time, we structured very nicely. As a matter of fact, I went over it with Joanna Landau from the Indigent Defense Commission, and I want to say she was interested in the way that we structured it, because they're just saying, these flat rates across the board. This gentleman in St. George was a flat rate. And the county up north that would consider helping other counties, but you'd have to contract with them. Right. They're saying that on the low end, 4,000, on the high end, about 12,000, which is, that's why they're coming up with.
There's a range there. I mean, that's more reasonable, but.
At the time that Scott was here and we structured this, when Dale signed on, we had guilty pleas. So you have the appeals that result from a guilty plea, and then those that result from a single-day trial, those that result from a multi-day trial, and we layered those with different amounts. So originally, the guilty plea was $1,000. We actually increased that. I think it was in last year's budget year to $1,500. It was, we were kind of pushing the envelope there. So multi-day trials, $2,500, and $5,000 for, single-day trial, $2,500, multi-day, $5,000. I do foresee that with what's happening in the state's involvement, and that you're going to probably see a need for us, even if we do get to retain Dale Sessions, that we're probably going to have to look at those and do some tweaking or some increasing, because obviously we're below the rates that they're paying others throughout the state. That's something that if he is allowed to be on the roster and can continue to do the workforce, that we'll, want to address with him and see what he's willing to do the work for, because now obviously he's aware of this as well. So that's the update on him. The commission, the Indigent Defense Commission. If you have any other questions, the application process for the second go round on the roster, the 25th. So today is the last day for them to submit their new applications. So hopefully we'll know something in a reasonable time frame, but I don't know what exactly that time frame is.
Just for the record, we got a really nice letter sent to Senator Lee, who forwarded that to his brother Thomas, who's on the Supreme Court. And I got feedback that he got it, and it's on his radar. I think that might help, because he's on that. They're the ones that pick for the roster. So hopefully that'll at least bring it to their attention. And we were very firm that we feel like our attorneys down here every bit, if not better than those up there. We should have our share of work, and so.
we should at least be able to contract or employ the people in our county.
Well, and to have to go clear up north, you know, even, you know, just the travel they're going to add, the travel expense they're going to add, and so on.
I
mean,
guess
just
with
things
appeals,
like
that
we should-
may not be that big of an expense, and Dale could speak better to that. I mean, a lot of the work is a lot of research work, which is why it's it's price intensive, because there's just a lot of research that needs to go into it. The other thing, and the last thing that I've got there is, in talking to Joanna Landau, who's been so helpful, she really encouraged us with the amount of funds that are now available through grant for appeals, not for appeals, but for public defense, indigent defense, really encouraged us as a county to fill out a grant application. So I helped Adrian do that on behalf of the county, and I've included a copy of the questionnaire. I thought it was important because, and I briefly tapped on it with Commissioner Cousins before I sent it, you know, they're willing to help. I think I requested some money over the course of 3 years because if granted that money, I think the county's going to then be on the hook to maintain that. So I wanted you to be aware of that, be aware of this application. I'm not sure where we'll come in. They said, I did get an email back from her that she received it and that sometime in April they'll be reviewing those applications. If we are granted any funds, they would be available as of July. And the request was that they help us over the course of the next 3 years so that the county would have time to prepare and budget for any long-range increases.
Yeah, hopefully they'll continue with that. As you know, we're only one of 2 states in the nation that the counties are required to pay for the indigent defense, and it seems ridiculous. And I know they're starting to come around a little bit with that, but anyway.
Well, yeah, philosophically, we're in a tough position because of what you just said. It's our responsibility to maintain the budget, yet, the mandates and dictates are coming down from the state, but for right now, that's where we're at. Do you have any other questions?
Thanks for doing that application. We appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm just, hopefully we'll get some funding.
I don't know why they would discriminate against any individual county. If they've got a block of money, I don't know why they would say, well, Iron County can't have their share. But
oh, no,
we'll see what
I
happens.
think she felt pretty good. And kind of pat on the back to myself, to Adrian, to all of us, and is the fact that we did get our arms around a public defense, 3 years ago, because when I pulled up all the reports and things that we maintain, that case tracking, I know that that's probably a pain for our public defenders. It's it's like high school. I'm always having to check in and make sure that they're getting those tracking reports in. It probably seems like a little bit of a nag, but that's going to make the difference on how we're perceived and how we're maintaining our our caseloads, and I think that in the long run that'll help us. They were impressed with the due diligence that we do every year, so hopefully, cross my fingers.
Yeah, there has to be accountability, so I think
yeah.
even though it's a little onerous, it's important. So
yeah, all right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maureen.
Okay, appreciate it.
Emergency. Mr. Colson. George, how are you this morning?
Good, Commissioner. How are you?
Good, welcome.
Morning, Commissioners. So, starting with 2008, you have the 2019, but after talking to the county auditor this morning, I came in about a little over 11,000 under budget last year. Now, that's somewhat skewed because part of that is grant money, but still taking out the grant, probably I was able to return about $4,000 to the county last year. Right now in the 2019, I'm running between 6 and 7% of my budget right now, so we're pretty much online. That's excluding, of course, salaries and benefits, but the other items we're running pretty good. The only major monies that are going to be in the near future is that we're up for renewal of our county emergency app, the mobile app that goes on the phone. That's going to be a couple of thousand. And then we're looking at our Everbridge renewal, which will be several $1,000s. So those are the 2 big ticket items that are going to be, that will affect this 2019 in the near future.
So there'll be an increase from what we've been paying in Everbridge, or
I'd have to go back and look at historically what we've done. I don't think if it's an increase, it doesn't look to be too much, but I will look into that.
Okay.
As far as the other things that we're working on, thanks to Commissioner Blake, IT, and our contractor, we're finally looking at the end of our Everbridge interface with mobile phones, with mobile devices. That's been over a year in the making. We're finally getting down towards the end of it. I got an email this morning that we've got our MCAT up, and now we're just looking at how many people are going to be using it. It's going to cost us a little more than we thought, and I believe IT's talked to Commissioner Blake on that. But a lot of hard work by people, by the contractor, and Commissioner Blake and IT, and it's finally going to be
Hopefully up and running. Keep the firemen off our backs.
Well, yeah, every time I go to the fire chiefs meeting, I get beat up about that. So I'm getting kind of tired of being beat up. But it's going to be an asset to our law enforcement and our fire guys. So it's a good thing.
It is. And just to mention, I talking with Jared the other day. There is we didn't get enough licenses, and that's going to cost us some extra to pick up those additional licenses. But with some other things that Jared's been able to arrange around, it should still fall within budget. So we're not looking at a budget increase, just shuffle around. So we should still remain within budget. But there is a need to purchase some additional licenses, which will cost some more, but it's not going to knock us out of budget.
Good.
And we don't want to, and at this point, after all the work that's been in it, we don't want to shortchange, some of them, especially some of the more remote communities like Bryan Head or, Burl Junction and some of those places. So we're doing good. Some of the other things that I'm working with the different water suppliers in the county and with the state geologists, and I'm looking into identifying where our water sources are, where our pumping stations are, reservoirs, and where our fault lines are in the county. I'm hopefully by this year I can develop a map that shows all of the water sources in the county and all the fault lines and do an overlay so that we've got a good idea of, where there might be any problems with water sources and fault lines. So that's one thing that major thing that I'm working on.
So, George, along those lines,
Yes, sir.
there's actually a meeting you might be interested in. It's this week. It's on the 28th at the Cedar City Library. And I've got this down at 4, and I don't think that's right. I think it's later in the evening. I might have to get back to you on that. Shoot. I think I put it in there tentatively, and I forgot to move it. But I think it's probably around 6 or so. But I'll try to get back to you on that. But there's a group. Dennis Cox is doing a presentation on the universal model. It's a new way of thinking about geology. And then there's also a group coming up from California, Primary Water Resources, and they actually map fault lines and some of those things, and they've had success around the world in finding new water in fissures, fault lines, and some of these things where they believe water's coming up. It's kind of a new source of water that's coming up that they believe, they've tapped into that in other areas of the world. And they've got a proposal to map our county. That might be something you might be interested in attending.
It would be. Thank you, Commissioner.
And
in talking to I almost wish I hadn't sat down with the state geologist, because I learned all kinds of things that maybe I would have been better off. Ignorance is bliss. But we've got some major compaction problems and from aquifer being reduced, and we've got some fairly big cracks that are developing in in the county. So working with mutual aid agreements with the municipalities, with the county attorney's office, and trying to get the municipalities to sign those mutual aid agreements. We're continuing to work on that. I'm working with Homeland Security right now, identifying critical infrastructure in the county and getting that list to Homeland Security. And I'm continuing to work on the equipment inventory, just trying to figure out what it is I've got, what it is I need, and what can be let go. And one purpose is I want to get. Right now, we don't have. My department doesn't have a lot of our equipment insured, and so I want to get a good list of it so that I can provide it to John, and we can get that on the insurance list, because I've got some fairly high ticket items, so that would cost the county a lot of money if we had to replace them.
I'm glad you realized that, and I get that. Yeah, that's always important. Update.
You're always seems like there's always something that escapes us, but it'll be good to get that inventory.
Well, that epiphany came to me as I was coming off the mountain one night with a $15,000 signboard, and I started thinking, if this thing goes, this isn't on anybody's list. This isn't on an inventory list, and that's $15,000 that the county's out. And that's when the next morning I started making a list. So we're continuing to work on that.
Great. Good.
So, George, I have a question on,
Sir.
put my tinfoil hat on for a minute. As far as EMP, preparation for EMP attack, whether it be low-level nuclear or solar flares, and we've talked about this a little bit in Cedar City, if something like that, heaven forbid, ever happened, and it knocks out our circuit boards and different things, what are we doing in the county to prepare for such a thing?
Well, and I'm not an electrical engineer, and it's no longer tinfoil hat stuff.
I know, but some people think it is. But it's you read about it, you read some things about electromagnetic pulses, and it's a real thing. And the likelihood, I think, is low, but still it could happen, and it's scary.
Well, in emergency management, there's two ways of grading things. There's the likelihood, and then the impact. Things may be a low probability, but if they do happen, the impact's going to be huge. And so that's how we figure out the hazard analysis, And there are things that are more likely to happen, but we're pretty well fixed to handle them. That's one of those things that probably outside of building Faraday cages for a lot of our stuff, which it's really pretty expensive to build a Faraday cage. I mean, a really good one. And we'd have to build it primarily around backup generators and things like that. I'm not sure. I'd have to sit with an engineer, and we'd have to discuss how we're going to prepare outside of building Faraday cages for everything.
It might be interesting to maybe see what other counties are doing. It might be interesting to, rather than build a Faraday cage around some of those items, is to have the components that are most vulnerable to that kind of attack. Maybe have those stockpiled in a Faraday cage so that they could be replaced. You know what I mean?
Right.
Maybe there's some things there that we can prepare for. Though I've just read a couple books on those things, and I mean, it scares you. What could happen? So
there was who was the journalist? Who was it? Reasoner or somebody last year wrote, and I read his book, and it's one of those. It's not a matter of if; it's a matter of when it's going to happen, because we've had increased sunspot activity and things like that. Those are always, we're much more in danger of that than we are the North Koreans doing an airburst over Cedar City. So, not that they don't think that we're important, but they're probably not going to waste their nuke on us. But yeah, I will follow up on that. So,
while you're there, George, I'm not afraid to admit that I don't understand something fully. So I'm not that up to date on EMP, and I don't know what a Faraday cage is. So just give us a short explanation.
Well, an electromagnetic pulse is something. There's several different ways to generate one. One is from a sunspot, from a solar flare, and what it does is it disrupts the electromagnetic fields in things. which, if it happened, if you don't have a car that was built, if you have a car that was built after 1975, it just became a flower pot because it's not going to work. It
knocks
fries all of the electronics.
All of the
in it.
circuits are fried.
All the circuits are fried. Any of your electrical grid, all of your computers are fried. So everything's driven by computers now. Our water supply, our electricity, all those grids are driven by computers. When that gets fried, then the water shuts off, the electricity goes off, and you're not able to function. If you have a car that was built prior to 1975, you're good. You're driving around town in your 56 Chevy, but everybody else, we're pretty much stuck. A Faraday cage is a complex of copper wiring that's built around something that takes the initial EMP away from the device and protects it, shields it from it. The other way to, besides a solar flare, is a low-level nuclear blast. If you launch a nuclear device, it doesn't have to be big, it can be just 1 kiloton, and do a low-level airburst, 500,000 feet, it creates the same kind of field like a solar flare does.
Wow.
Can basically take you to the Stone Age in a few seconds.
Oh yeah, it would take us back to probably the middle 19th century. We'd be back to horses and writing letters and having some 15-year-old kid on a horse deliver it. So
there's some things about that wouldn't be so bad. Some things that was a better
well,
world.
if some of us get wistful when we think about that, we'll be excused. But yeah.
But if we do that, we want to do it of our own volition, not because some major EMP. Anyway, well, thanks for the explanation, and we appreciate you keeping up on things. And I'm really happy you're doing that list on the water and the fault lines. That's really important.
Well, if we have a major disaster here in the county, people can last a long time without food, much longer than they think they can. But they can only last 3 days without water, and that's under optimum conditions. If you're talking about if we have a major disaster in the middle of the summer, that time goes down. So water's extremely important.
Yeah, no question.
And along those lines, George, we've, in Cedar City, we've talked about, having plenty of spare pipe and parts and fittings on hand in case we had a big earthquake and it cut off transportation. And we were, we need those things to have plenty of things on hand to fix things without being able to ship them in. And so I think those are things that are good to think about.
One additional item on water. In reviewing some of the emergency operations plans that were left in my office, I noticed that we've got quite a few reservoirs and several dams in the county. Their emergency operations plans are out of date, and so I'm going to be getting with those facilities and those municipalities that control that, and making sure that they get those up to date. And they're inspected on a regular basis by the state, but I still want their emergency plans to reflect what's going on now.
One thing with water, Cedar City, about 10% of our water can fill our tanks from springs from the canyon, and so that's an awesome thing. And in a really dire emergency, we can at least have drinking water. I don't know, is Parowan in a place where they can get water?
We have what we call the 6 Mile spring up here, and it got contaminated, and so they just put it in the irrigation for years. But so it's all wells now. But I guess they ought to have a backup generator or something to pump a well. But we used to. Oh yeah, it was. When I was a kid, no chlorine, pristine. It was the best water in the world. Anyway, but they don't use that source right now.
Well, we might want to.
Culinary, but they, probably though the pipe's still there in an emergency, they probably could tap into that.
Canara would be in decent shape, I think, with their water system, the way they get their water.
Well, the primary suppliers of the Water Conservancy District, Cedar City has its own, and then. Enoch is the other big supplier because they supply their own water.
Right.
So I think I think the water issue is one we really ought to look at close and be prepared to the best of our ability.
Right.
Paraguna's on spring water.
Are they?
Yeah,
That's
so
good.
they're in good shape that way. So us Parowan folks will have to go down there to get a drink, maybe.
What about Burrell? Are they in,
Well, Burrell's not a municipality or Newcastle. Burrell's so spread out. I think it's all wells.
oh, well done.
And Newcastle, I'm not sure what their
They've got that
culinary is.
reservoir, but I don't know if they use that for
That's-
culinary.
I'm not sure about Newcastle.
And I'm not sure about our newest municipality in the county, so
I'm sure. Well, I'm not.
They've got springs. They
Yeah.
most of their water supplied by springs, so they're in pretty good shape.
I doubt if they've got any wells. I don't know.
They do have a well.
They do have a well.
They do have a well, and when we fire it up, the problem is the water smells. It's got a lot of sulfur in it, and it smells really bad and tastes bad, and so they don't use the well much. It's a good backup, but they mostly, pretty much use springs totally.
Yeah.
So.
And Brian Head's on springs, but they also have wells.
right. Yeah, Brian Head's been real as far as fire and a lot of other things. They've been real. They've leaned forward and done a lot of stuff because they understand that they could be cut off
Yeah, they're pretty
relatively
proactive.
easy.
Yeah, fairly easily.
Yep.
Yeah, they're very proactive on those kind of things.
Right. All right.
Okay, thank you so much, George. Appreciate it. Okay, Danny, glad to have you with us this morning. How are you? No, and feel free to go over if you need more than 5 minutes. That's not a problem.
Okay. If I'm going long, let me know.
Oh, you're good. We got a real short agenda, so you don't need to stop at 10 o'clock. We're fine.
All right. Well, thank you, commissioners, for having me here. I'm surprised how quickly this review comes around. Just seems like the years and weeks get shorter. Let me make sure this works here. So I got just several different things we'll talk about today, and I'm going to be looking at the screen and at you. But if you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. This first one here, I believe most of you were at the meeting that we had with Patrick Mullen from Utah Association of Counties about the opportunity zones. This is something we continue to work on. Spending a lot of time with Mr. Mullen and with Stuart Clayson. We have great opportunity zones in Iron County. I won't go into the background and the history of that in this presentation, but if you ever have any questions on this, please feel free to contact me. But the opportunity zones have been defined. They are set as long as this legislation is in place, which will be at least 10 years. We'll have these boundaries and for the life of opportunity funds that are set up now, so that will go for some time. Having the bulk of the western half of the county where we have our railroad spur, we have a lot of opportunity for solar development and other projects. That is a good opportunity zone for us. And then the other one on the southeastern part of the county, we have Cedar City's historic downtown. We have some Main Street properties all the way out to the south interchange, and then we have Paiute tribal land that's included in that. So there are some prime opportunities for development. We are currently working with Patrick Mullen and Stuart Clayson to put together our kind of inventory of those projects which are closest to being able to act on. The most shovel-ready projects are the ones that are going to benefit first of all. And anyway, that's a good thing for us. We're still waiting for final regulations to come out from the Treasury Department, but we do have some interest in some of these. We have some projects that are looking at taking advantage of this program. So we find that encouraging, something that can free up private funds for investment into development.
Excellent. Yeah, I know there has to be a lot of oversight on that, but it's a great opportunity if everything fits.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, not everything's going to be the perfect fit, but it does open up, like I say, some potential for investment from within and outside of the county. Let's see if we can get that next one there. Can you forward that for me?
Maybe.
Just try the arrow. There you go. Lots happened even just since the first of the year. Can't believe we're wrapping up 2 months into this year already, but we've had a lot of things happen. I've listed a few of the projects that I've been working with that are industrial projects, and these are just a half a dozen or 5 of dozens of projects that we've responded to through EDC Utah, and also projects that come to us. The ones I wanted to comment on are the ones that are seem to be progressing the best. We have the first one, Project GoX, is a project I've been working with for just barely over a year now. These large-scale projects don't happen very quickly, but this one is progressing very nicely. This company is looking at a parcel in Port 15, Utah on the north side of the tracks, which would be nice to start the development going that direction into Port 15. They're looking at least 100 jobs over 7 years in industrial manufacturing. They're technical jobs. The manufacturers, as you've seen, that industry is changing with automation. For us, it's a good fit, these types of companies where they don't bring a huge number of jobs, but those jobs that they do bring they pay higher wages, and they like that we have a university, a tech college, and the ability to train workforce here. Project Loyal is a project out of Canada. They found us on their own. They didn't come through EDC Utah. They found us from our rail site. They're also looking at Port 15. Project Steel is a smaller project.
You're on, before you go to Steel, so what is Loyal's business?
They're another manufacturing. Both GoX and Loyal would fit into the plastics composites type niche that we really suits us well, where they can bring raw materials in on the rail and ship their finished product out by truck. I don't have a job count or anything from Loyal. They're still pretty quiet, and we signed a non-disclosure agreement with them. But I anticipate the beginning of the first quarter that one might start moving a little more quickly. Excuse me. Project Steel is a smaller size. They'll be locating in the county, not within Port 15, but they're looking at some property that's close to Ampak Weco. That's actually will be sold by Ampak if that works out. Load Trail is a company that would would be a steel product manufacturer. They're very impressed with the Tech College's welding lab, with the training programs that are available through Southwest Tech, and with our workforce in general. I would anticipate that would be somewhere between 60 and 100 jobs. And they were looking at locating in Idaho. We had the opportunity to bring them here and do a site visit, and that one is moving pretty well. Project GEL is another plastic composite type project. Again, we signed a non-disclosure agreement with them, and we're still waiting. It will probably be mid-part of the year before they're back here for a site visit. But each of these companies have had representatives here. They're pleased with the things that we offer here in Iron County. So I'm happy with them. Thank you. This one, I sent a letter out to you that I received from the Utah Association of Counties this last week. But in the discussions with the Utah Inland Port is the discussion that's come up, and this is a drum that I've been beating for a couple of years with these folks. If they're looking at doing an inland port, to look at the state as a whole with a hub and spokes type model, to take some of the congestion and the focus out of just Salt Lake County and be able to expand some of at least the distribution warehousing of the inland port in places throughout the state that make sense. And really, there isn't another place in the state that makes more sense than Iron County does with our rail, where it's a separate spur and where we have a lot of industrial land that has the infrastructure in place for this. So I'll be in Salt Lake on Wednesday meeting with them. Stuart Clayson will be talking about this. He's asked me to come up and be prepared to share a little bit about the things that we have to offer here in Iron County, but that could be something that has good potential for us. If we look at 500 acres in Port 15, I don't know if I've made you aware of this, but there's 418 acres just north and west of Port 15 that's owned by a single property owner. 418 acres. They've got all of the infrastructure either in Iron Springs Road or the power along the rail and So that one's actually got preliminary approval as a Utah mega site through EDC Utah, where they would market that property for larger projects like this. Our geographic location for trucking is actually a lot better here than it is in Salt Lake. So there are a lot of things going well for us there. So we'll see if that brings any opportunities for us. Solar slowed down a little bit after everybody was rushing to get their projects in 2014, 2015. But we do have some projects that are looking right now at Iron County. We have Cove Mountain 1, which would be in the western part of the county, on our side of the county line out near Enterprise. That's I can't remember if that's an 80 or 100 megawatt, but that's a large scale, utility scale project.
Is that on private land?
It is on private
Like
land.
all
In
the
fact,
others,
yeah, all of these that we're working with are still on private land. That's preferable for these developers. Fremont and Rush Lake, these are two project areas that we approved back in 2014, actually 13 and 14 leading into this. And at the time, the developer was SunEdison, and they went bankrupt. They did get some projects up and going, and those are viable and running well. But those two that were approved, there's a company now called Long Road Energy. Brian Harris out of Beaver County works for that company, and he wants to anyway, we're looking at moving forward with those two projects as they were already planned and approved several years ago. With all these project areas, we've been trying to educate these developers on, the process, and we're trying to figure out the process on our local incentives for these projects. So we've got all the notifications out to those, and I think that process is becoming easier on our end and on their end, but they've all been notified. If they choose to reply, then we anticipate to have all those replies back before April 1st. That's the date that they need to reply in order to qualify. Working with Reed Erickson and with the developer of Cove Mountain 1, First Solar, they want to do some community outreach programs, and we're looking at a solar resource marketing campaign with them. If you go back to what the Office of Economic Development was doing well before my time, we were touting that this is the best place in the state or in the western U.S. for solar, as far as we've got the land, we've got high altitude, we have cooler temperatures, and a lot of things that come together to make the solar resource here very desirable. The companies know that now. We still want to keep the word out there and probably do a better job at educating our own residents as well as other companies that Iron County is really a prime spot for solar development, and not just utility scale type projects, but for solar innovation, for storage, for companies that are looking at doing things in solar. This is a good place for them to look, and working closely with First Solar and with Reed on that project. This is something that's more along the retail line of things. Retail is a whole different world from industrial. But I team up every year with EDC Utah, and we attend the ICSC Retail Convention in Las Vegas. It's the largest retail convention in the world. And we've had some success there in the past. We have a little Hibbett Sports sporting goods store in Cedar City came from that show. We've had some developers that have been kicking the tires at several properties in Iron County, most specifically the North Cedar City interchange. But retail's interesting. They're trying to figure out their future with the world of online shopping, and so they've been a little tentative in development, but we've had some good interest. I've listed this J.R. Moore, a professional with CBRE, real estate firm and developer out of Salt Lake, and they've been a good partner to kind of help us define our market and match it up with the types of projects that are looking for markets similar to ours. Retailers as a whole, they want to be safe in their development, and so they want X number of rooftops, X number of people that make X amount of money within a 10-minute drive time. And that's not who we are. We have a fair number of people in the county, about 50,000, but when these retailers are looking at 250,000 people, within 10 minutes, that's their safe thing, their go-to when they're going to develop a new site. We know that we are a regional commercial center, that we have counties surrounding us in Nevada and southwest Utah that come here to do their shopping and doctor visits and those sorts of things. I've actually talked with several different groups who do market surveys, and they're trying to find the best way to kind of paint that picture. If you look at the standard retail requirements, the stores that we have here don't, we don't fit what Walmart requires, and yet our Walmart Supercenter is one of the top performing in their entire region. And it's not because we fit their formula, it's because we have something unique here. Worked with Cindy Bullock and the assessors in the other counties, surrounding counties, and found that mostly on the mountains to the east of us, there are about 8,000 second homes that are in Iron, Garfield, and Kane counties, and the owners of those cabins play an important role in our economy, as do the tourists. So anyway, that's a big thing that we're working on to try to find the right retail fits, because some of our retailers are feeling, our bigger ones anyway, are feeling a little bit of a squeeze.
Sure.
Silicon Slopes, another project that we've been working on. You probably are familiar with Tech Up Group. They've been around for 10 years now, which is pretty cool. There's some great little local companies that have come out of Tech Up. We've tied in with the Silicon Slopes for the benefit of their brand, to kind of get the word out about the companies that are here and the capacity, the capability that we have here, and to tell the stories of our companies here. Silicon Slopes really is just a PR and marketing type organization, and that's what they do, is they just tell the success stories of these companies. They also work to have their companies give back to the communities. Anyway, we're thankful that they've taken kind of a statewide model. They're working closely with us to get our Cedar City chapter up and going, to tell the stories about our companies that are here and about the workforce that we have here, as other companies might look, especially at remote, hiring remote workers to work for their companies off of the Wasatch Front or other parts of the country. If you look there, the names on that are they make up the board of directors. We want to go with owners of tech companies to kind of run that Silicon Slopes, and we support them as well as SUU, Southwest Tech, and the school district and the chamber. But those companies are the one that are kind of driving this now. Had the opportunity to work a little bit more with some of the other communities outside of Cedar City. Being a Cedar City employee but working with the county, we've had some successes here because Iron County's unique as far as rural classification goes in the state. We qualify for some programs that are rural, and we don't qualify for others, and we partially qualify for others. But I've been able to work with companies throughout the county to be able to tap into some economic development resources, some grants, and some tax programs that have helped companies acquire new equipment and be able to hire new people. Working with town of Bryan Head, we had the chance to put them together in the same room with some developers to look at some new growth projects up in Bryan Head that would extend their season more as a year-round and enhance their winter season as well. And they've been great to work with. So there's a program in the state called Rural Fast Track Grants that Iron County qualifies for, with the exception of Cedar City. But we've had 8 to 10 companies outside of Cedar City who have qualified for those Rural Fast Track Grants, up to $50,000 to purchase equipment if they hire and create new jobs to go along with that. And that's been really successful. We also are closely associated with these groups in the state. We find a lot of our success comes from just people knowing who we are, and if we can be involved with these groups, that helps us. This year's affiliation with Utah Association of Counties has been extremely helpful for Iron County and for other rural counties in the state, and we look forward to our association with that group. Also with Utah Alliance for Economic Development. That's a nonprofit group that's made of economic development professionals, of developers, of utility companies, and that's been a really strong networking organization for me, and I actually serve as the president of that organization this year, which has been nice to be able to make some connections there. Of course, Utah Governor's Office of Economic Development and EDC Utah continue to be strong partners with us. You've heard of this. This is something that I'm helping the airport manager. We just hired a brand new airport manager as Jeremy was hired in Texas. Now we have Nick Holt, who's coming here from St. George Airport. With the closure of their runway this summer, the end of May through the end of September, Cedar City Regional will get that St. George flight schedule, the Cedar City to Salt Lake flights, which gives us a nice opportunity to have that early morning flight. Trying to get the word out to everybody that those flights are available. Going to need to book early because those passengers from St. George are going to be looking to book those as well. But our hope is that if we have enough usage from Iron County, people who are needing to fly to Salt Lake for earlier meetings or to catch earlier connections, if we can fill those flights throughout the summer, that'll give us a little more leverage and a little more credibility with SkyWest as we look for more expanded service from SkyWest.
We have that early flight when we had the turboprop.
We did.
Yeah.
We did.
It was an awesome time.
You know,
The problem is you can't, with that 9 o'clock we have now, you can't really catch connecting flights. And
yeah, and it saves so much money if you can do that, to catch connecting flights or to hit meetings up there. I think it's important as economic development to really push for that, and I've met with SkyWest, and you know, they see us as, well, you're an essential air service airport. We're going to go there and do our thing and punch the ticket. But we've done surveys in the community, and we know that there's a lot of opportunity for increased service there, and we're trying to improve our standing with them. I think this is a great opportunity to do it.
our employments are off the chart. I mean,
Yeah.
over the years. And are they going to keep track of where people are coming from to fly so we can show the numbers?
Yes.
This is Cedar City. This is, and actually, a lot of the times I fly, a lot of people from St. George are driving up to fly out of our airport because they don't like driving and pay for the parking. Like the ones that are on the north end of St. George, Washington County, they're driving to Cedar City to fly out.
It's true. It's almost the same distance for them, and it's a little shorter now that they've finished their belt route down there. But you're right. There are a lot of people who are coming up here to use this, and we know that, and we track those through the airport where the employments are coming from. And again, if we can pack those and make it difficult for Washington County flyers to get here because we're filling those seats, I think that'll help us get attention. SkyWest doesn't, you know, the overnighted plane here so we can have that early flight. Every city that they serve wants a plane overnighted there to get that overnight. But to overnight a plane's a big deal for them, and it takes a huge commercial investment for them to do that. We want to show them that it's going to be worthwhile. And the thing that's unfortunate a little bit is the university's out of session. A lot of those professors and staff from the university who fly a lot won't be flying as much in the summer, but I think that we'll be able to capitalize on that. If you go online right now, all of those flights you're able to book those and plan those right now.
Do you know what our employments were for 2018?
I don't. In the transition between the airport directors, I didn't get that number, but I can
used to have
find
a hard
that.
time getting to 10,000. I don't think we have that problem anymore.
I think they're pushing 15 or
Really.
I think it was high 14 last that I saw.
That's
Yeah.
good. Excellent.
And then just in closing out, just wanted to list some of the things that we're involved in. Brad Abrams in my office is involved in a lot of these things. They're a little more local. But the Cedar City Historic Downtown Committee, the Historic District, which has been renewed again, the Utah Department of Heritage and Arts, National Association of Counties Creative Counties Placemaking Project, a Conservation Leadership Network. We actually have Brad and several members of the community are on their way right now to West Virginia to a conference on that. The Tourism Bureau, working with Maria, is outstanding. She's a great partner. A lot of counties partner their tourism and their economic development, and thank you for not doing that, because it's really two different worlds, but they really enhance each other.
Danny, can I jump in right there?
Yes.
So Mike and I met with Maria last week. Dallin Staley, the glacier that's running the ice rink.
Uh-huh.
They hired a woman to come down. She was an advisor. What do you call her?
That's the consultant.
Consultant, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks. And she did a study. They were going to try to put an ice rink. It's been so successful. They were going to try to build an ice rink out on Cove Drive between the ball fields and the aquatic center on that curve, but it came in so expensive. They're looking to propose. They've actually hired Mark Wilson, who drew the plans for the aquatic center, and he's drawn plans so that they could put a roof over the ice rink and use it. That's their biggest thing, is keeping the sun off the ice and keeping the snow off when it does storm, because it really shuts them down. But they're looking at proposing to Cedar City to say, hey, we'll draw these plans, and even though it's not deemed a permanent location for the ice rink, we'll build it in such a way that it can be easy. Once we move out, it can immediately be turned into a rec center. It would have the walking track. It would have everything would work perfectly for either one. All they'd have is they'd have a concrete floor with the cooling lines in it, which technically you could maybe even set up a boiler and run heating through that lines and to heat the building, when they're gone. So it could even be used for that. But that's something. Staley West has taken over the operation of the ice rink, and they've actually hired, I think, 15 employees that are running that, and they're making money. It's a nonprofit. It's a public-private partnership that's been very successful. But they think they could extend their season at least 6 months out of the year and bring a lot more. They're already bringing a lot of teams and out of state and out of other cities coming in to use the ice rink. A lot of St. George folks, and anyway, that's kind of exciting. We were just exploring some of the options with restaurant tax and maybe the things that could be helped, because it's a great winter venue to bring in more tourism, and I hadn't had a chance to talk too much about it yet, but that's something that's in the works, and that's kind of exciting. He's going to make a proposal to Cedar City Council soon about some of those ideas.
No, I appreciate that, and that's an important thing, and Maria sees the picture as well. We have our summer tourism. Our market here, and when it comes to retail and other things, it's different, because we almost have two completely different markets, our summer market and our off-season market. But being able to stretch some of these things out for several months is very valuable to bringing people into the community.
Well, they've got a great relationship with the Golden Knights in Las Vegas, and even though they won't give, they were hoping to get some big contributions from them. They're not willing to do that right now because they're short on ice space in Las Vegas, and so they're spending millions of dollars on adding new ice. But they will include them in their programming, so they'll send teams up, which will draw teams from northern Utah down, fill our motels, restaurants in the wintertime, which is going to be really beneficial. So the exciting thing about that whole thing is it's really cost the taxpayers $0, other than RAP tax that that was passed by the voters. That's the only one that's ever been, only tax dollars that's ever really been contributed is those RAP tax to help us a few things. But other than that, it's been really successful.
Yeah.
So.
No, I agree. That's important. Along that same line, I don't know if you've talked or heard recently from Utah Summer Games, but I've been meeting with them, and they're looking at stretching that stretching that beyond June, and they've done that now. They've stretched some of those sports that they can pick up some high school water polo and different things that was hard to get in June to bring. And so anyway, they're stretching their events earlier into the spring and later into the fall. They're working with, as part of the university, they're working at doing what Steve Lunt did for years and bringing tournaments here from the Utah High School Athletics Association, and to look at bringing people into town at on those shoulder months where we've struggled a little bit. So I appreciate that Summer Games is doing that. Shakespeare Festival down a little bit this last year, but with the lineup that they have this year, and the new, some of those new folks getting acclimated to Cedar City. We've got some promising things there. So
You think it's? I mean, how far down were they last year?
I'd have to go back and ask Maria. I just know that they were down a little bit on their ticket sales,
They're
but I don't know what the
optimistic.
percentage was. They're optimistic.
About this year. Good.
Yeah, I mean, there's several reasons for that. They've had different missions, and one of them were to get all of the Shakespeare canon in, and some of those don't draw as big a crowds as others, and they had some of those last year. But anyway, there's I know they're bringing a popular musical back that really was successful a few years, and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat will probably bring some folks in. But anyway, I find that the days are too short and there's too many balls in the air sometimes to juggle, but it's all enjoyable, and we have some great things here in Marion County. I'm happy to be part of making the world aware of what we've got here.
For our part, we really enjoy working with Danny. He's been fantastic and trying to figure out some of the solar and some of the things that we do. So we appreciate Danny.
Yeah, likewise. The staff here is outstanding, and we have good involvement with the university as well. I don't know if you were aware that Wes Curtis retired, and his position, in that position they've restructured a little bit to be a little more local and economic development focused. So that's going to really help us, and those individuals are interviewing for that position right now. So anticipate that'll be filled before the end of March, I hope.
Excellent. All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate all that's happening and all you do to keep that moving along. Thanks so much. We'll take a really short break and be right back for our 10 o'clock appointments that we're a little late on. But anyway, it's been a good discussion.
Yeah. What's your Wednesday look like? What's your Friday look like? Okay. You want to tentatively talk maybe Friday?
See if you came in when I was talking about our marketing.
I'm gone Friday.
Okay.
I'll be on my way to DC. Not looking forward to that.
You're gonna be, how long are you gonna be there?
All week till I'll be back next Thursday. So my first day, my next one would be next Friday.
Next Friday. Well, maybe what we can do is Dan and Danny and I can just go.
Yeah. Yeah, my week is.
That sounds like awesome, except not awesome.
I'm shot. From here on out, this whole week blows. This week and next. The problem is I gotta cram. I've got all sorts of stuff crammed into this week because I'll be gone. I leave Friday and then I don't come home till the next Thursday night.
Oh, let's see. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you, John. All right, at this time, we will have a public hearing to receive comment on a grant and our loan funding application to the Utah Community Impact Board, commonly known as CIB, to perform a structural upgrade on 10.3 miles of the Iron Springs Road. Reed Erickson, well, I'll declare the public hearing open, and then we'll turn it over to Reed, to our county planner, to explain this. Then we'll have any comments that you might have on this subject.
Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that. And I'll just do a brief introduction to explain the process and the application. This is a grant application to the Permanent Community Impact Board Fund, referenced as CIB, for $5,402,978. That's the total project cost of what we're asking, $5 million. Our cash application or our contribution would be $406,978. In this hearing, the purpose of the hearing is for CIB to get a record when we go to them, that they see that we've taken this to the public and that we've talked about two important components. One, that what our application is for, and the other is that we want to consider any discussion in the event that they do not issue the full grant amount or provide the full grant amount, that they would want us to mention whether or not we would consider a portion or the entire amount as a low interest loan. What their rate is 2.5%, and in many of the projects that go for grant application, they don't grant the full amount. They may come back and say, we will grant it half and do a loan for half. They want to make sure that we cover that in the public hearing, that people are aware that we may or may not consider that, and that's the discussion that we would have. So the project itself is a result of Alton Coal's growth and acquiring the BLM property lease for coal expansion on their current operation, and their interest in bringing that coal to Iron County and putting it on an a load-off station out off of the Iron Springs Road, just next to AMPAC out there. It's 10.3 miles from the Y, and that road was constructed years ago as a chip seal road, and Steve can give the details of that. But when AMPAC came, it was WECO at the time, the county helped participate and build that road out there, and it is not structurally adequate to handle the multitude of coal trucks that would be anticipated with this expansion. This project would anticipate about 350 coal trucks a day over the next 3 years. That would be the maximum build out for the coal plant, and the load-off station would be able to handle that much traffic and that much coal to put it on the rail out there at this new station. The new load-off station is estimated at a $10 million build that would be on the tax roll for the county as industrial development. And the concern is the adequacy of the road structurally would not be able to handle that. The weight of all those trucks, and it would soon deteriorate the road and break it up. And so this is anticipated a project to put 5 inches of asphalt on that existing road structure that could adequately handle the weight of those trucks. And so that's the purpose of the project. It would only be done, if the coal trucks start coming and we, want to build it in advance of that. Our estimate would be that we would have time to construct that road improvement by the time they built the facility. So once they got their conditional use permit and started construction on their facility, then we could start construction on the road and know that we wouldn't be building the road for no reason, and that we would anticipate, they anticipate their construction period of being 6 months. So we would have plenty of time to do that, and they hope to start this spring. And that's why we are in process now of making sure that we have funding in place to do the road improvement. We are scheduled for this April 4th CIB meeting, and we need minutes of this hearing, this discussion in advance of that, so that they know that we've had this discussion.
Will we get a decision in that meeting, Reed?
What they do is they vote to move it to the funding meeting. So they don't actually fund it at that time, but they decide whether they're going to or not, and then it's funded in May, at the end of the May meeting, or it's actually be the June meeting that they would fund it. They have March, April, and May. They have 3 cycles that they hear applications for that one time period and then fund at the end of that.
It's pretty rare that they would approve it and then
yeah, it'd have to be an emergency of some type before they would suspend the rules and fund at the meeting. So the only other thing that I would mention is that this application isn't an application by Iron County. It's an application by the Iron County Special Service District number 3, which is the applicant. We're not holding the hearing. The hearing is just to get information on the application, but we want to make it clear in the hearing and for the minutes that the applicant is not Iron County, and it wouldn't be a general fund obligation if we were to take a loan and the grant. The money wouldn't come into the Iron County General Fund coffers. It would come into the Special Service District number 3, which is a separate entity. And even though the commission is the board of that group, we do it that way because we don't want to jeopardize our PILT funding. Since it's federal funding, we would have to, whatever amount we would acquire in grant, we would have to reduce our PILT funding the following year by that amount. And so we don't want to jeopardize any of our PILT funding. We were reassured that by using this district, this district also receives the funds from the SRS school funding. But that's a separate funding source and would not be in jeopardy by putting this federal money. It's a mineral lease money on mineral extraction, and that's where the money comes from, and would not jeopardize our SRS school funds by going into the Special Service District number 3. So we want also that to be in the minutes. Anything else that I should cover that for an introduction?
Covered it very well. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. Okay, the public hearing is open. Any comments from the public? Please come forward. Please state your name.
My name is Jan Webster. This is my wife, Sharon. We live in Cedar City. We own property on the Canary Mountain in the Upper Basin.
Oh, Jan, this would have to be comments on this particular issue, this public hearing. Then you can give your comments during the public comment period, which will be in just a few moments.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem. We're just taking comments strictly for the public hearing regarding the loan / grant for the Community Impact Board. So no problem at all. You'll get your opportunity in just a few moments. Is anybody else that has any comments regarding this item? Okay, seeing none, we'll declare please come forward and state your name.
My name is Chris Dolan. I'm a resident of Cedar City, and I just have a question, and I just want to put it out there so it makes it public hearing. So this is still going to, is there fees and other charges that will be made by the county to offset the cost of the upgrade? And that's my only question, and I'll leave that just kind of floating out there. And just, you guys may have an answer, you may not, but I just want the question left out there.
Okay, Reed, do you want to?
Can try to address that. I asked Danny, I don't know if he left, Danny Stewart to help us evaluate what the economic impact of this would be and what revenue that we would get as a result of this. The load-off station, the $10 million load-off station, is anticipated to provide 20 jobs. He did what they call a annual impact. They have a consulting company in Salt Lake that helps analyze the value of certain types of jobs in certain industries. And they directed with direct jobs, they anticipated that the compensation would be $1,159,000. Direct benefit and indirect would be about 1.6 million, so it would be about $2.6 million direct impact on those 20 jobs. We haven't been able to evaluate the revenue directly to the county yet on what the tax revenue from the build-out station would be or any other economic benefit, because we haven't got the numbers from the coal company in terms of where all of the fuel. Right now they have a contract with Barney Trucking out of Salina, but that's not an exclusive contract. There could be consultant or independent truckers that bring some of that coal. And where they're stationed, they anticipate that a number of the trucking jobs would be located because of the additional trucks that they would need. A lot of those jobs would be located in Iron County, but it's really hard to estimate that. We don't have a direct revenue stream from mineral lease money in Iron County. We are actually a contributing county. CIB breaks the state up in contributing and non-contributing counties, and usually do not grant money from the CIB to non-contributing counties. They do to contributing counties, but we are actually the number 16th contributing county of the 29 counties. So we do have some small amount of mineral severance, and I've asked CIB for that to see where that exactly comes from, and haven't got that yet. So, but we will receive some. We do receive some mineral severance or mineral lease money. If we were to bond, and I guess I'm extrapolating Chris's question, and maybe if we took a loan, how we would pay that back, or what benefit we would get if it were a loan versus a grant. If it's a grant, then it's comes from the mineral lease money, which is the industry tax given to the state for the impacts, and that's why we're asking for it in a grant, because this is a direct impact from that industry, and so we'd expect that we get a grant, but what we've been told we most likely would not. They gave us an example of a similar project in Sevier County that they did a few years ago that was ironically called the Quichupah Road Project. I didn't know anyone else in the state had a Quichupah, but they have a coal mine up there that's actually in Sevier County, and they built a new road for that, and they borrowed $28 million from the CIB. And they didn't get any grant on it. And so what they ask us to do is say, well, you've got to show us why this would be any different than that project, and historically why the CIB why we should get grant money, when historically they haven't given grant money for non-contributing counties. And the big contributing counties are Carbon County, Uinta County, Duchesne County, Daggett County, some of those. And we have done well at CIB, but we have done so with grants primarily, or loans primarily, and with some grant money. We actually got, on this building, got a 50% grant, 50% loan a couple of years ago. So it can happen, but the way that Sevier County did it on their loan, and what they did to pay back their loan was they entered into a contract with a coal company and had a pledge from them that they would make those annual payments because of the benefit it was to them to get a lower interest loan and get the road built and have it maintained by the county and have it be a county road. I think that if we were unsuccessful in our grant application and were to consider a loan, we would want to have discussion with Alton Coal about entering into some type of agreement to pay the county back for that if we decided to take the loan. We don't have to decide to take the loan at this time. Right. In fact, when we go to CIB and they make the decision, in order for us to get a loan, if we determine to do that, we would have to hold bond hearings to bond for that amount, and in that bond hearing we would hold that in the name of the Special Service District, and we would explain what revenue stream we're going to use to redeem that. I sent in the packet a couple of estimates for the payment amount, and for a 15-year loan, which is the longest you can get on a road project to be paid by a revenue stream similar to what we would consider, and they're around $400,000 annual payments on the $5 million total, and about $200,000 a year on the $2.5 million if we got a 50% loan, 50% grant. So that's certainly way above what we currently get on our mineral lease annual payments, and so that wouldn't be a sufficient revenue stream to pay that. And so I think we would have to enter into some type of agreement or anticipate that the economic benefit that we would derive from those additional jobs, loadout station, the trucking, fuel tax, if we evaluated that and determined that the benefit is sufficient, that we would have the return on that money, then the commission, acting as the Special Service District number 3, could determine to go ahead and bond as a revenue bond for the repayment of that loan. If they
I'm concerned that we have no guarantees they'll buy their fuel here. We have
no,
right. I mean,
exactly. Those are things we'd have to
right.
have in a contract to determine that there's benefit there that we could guarantee for the revenue to repay.
Right, and even if they agreed to pay the note, what happens if coal prices dip or the demand or something down the road? We're stuck with that bond. So
those are the discussions we would have
right.
as we considered a grant during the bond hearing right. or considered a loan.
On the talking about the direct and indirect impact, the 1.15 and the 1.6 million indirect, are those total or per year?
Per year. That's per year. They're estimating $2.6 million of direct and indirect benefit because of those 20 jobs.
Per year. But like Paul says, there's no guarantee that they buy their fuel here or that.
No.
Or that they live here, or that those 20 jobs would be working out at the new facility at the load-off station. But in addition to that, there's significant other benefits that could come if fuel is purchased here. Primarily, that would probably be the biggest one.
Would and this is just something I've wondered, would we have to, on the north leg of the belt route, have to beef that road up, or would it be the same?
This wouldn't really play into the belt route. They would be coming starting this year. Yeah, they anticipate about 168 trucks starting as soon as they got the loadout station finished. The belt route isn't anticipated on that north leg for a number of years, so we don't anticipate that being part of this discussion.
Thanks for that explanation. Any other public comments regarding this issue? Seeing none. Please, Steve.
This is probably pie in the sky, but it ought to be mentioned. We have actually approached UDOT about making this a state highway. The advantages, the reasons for it being a state highway are it's multimodal, meaning a rail service comes to this facility, and then what comes in by truck goes to the port by rail. A fuel line, the UNEV pipeline all the way from Salt Lake to Las Vegas has a spur into Love's facility, so there's a fuel depot on this road. Again, that fuel depot bringing trucks argues for more of a state facility. The thing that argues against it being a state route is it's a dead end. It only goes to Waco. State of Utah likes their roads to loop and connect as in a loop. But we have had the discussion with UDOT personnel. That's in their hierarchy now. They're considering it. I doubt it will become a state highway, but I thought it should be mentioned.
Thank you so much. Any other public comment regarding this issue? Seeing none, the chair declares the public hearing closed. This time we'll go to item number 1. Kevin Bunnell from Division of Wildlife, State Division of Wildlife, will be presenting a PILT check. We're always happy to accept checks. Thanks for being here, Kevin.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As mentioned, I'm here to deliver our PILT payment for the Division of Wildlife Resources for the lands that we own in Iron County. I've got a letter from our director and the check, and then Mr. Chairman, if you could just sign this for me that I could return it.
Sure. Right here. And it is the 25th. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And while I'm here, are there any questions that I can take relative to the Division of Wildlife and anything that's going on in Iron County? I will say that we very much appreciate the partnership we have. We work a lot with Reed and with Mike, and work very well. My staff does with them, particularly on prairie dog issues, which we're in a better place than they were in the past, and I think we have a plan to get ourselves in even a better place in the future when it comes to prairie dogs. But nothing moves as quickly as we'd like it to. But we are moving forward on some plans to. I do hope that within the next 12 months we will be submitting a delisting proposal to have management authority for prairie dogs returned back to the state instead of working under the Fish and Wildlife Service. But that's the long-term goal, and we're working towards that, and it's going slower than we'd like it to, but I think doing it right up front will pay off on the backside, is my hope. So,
Evan, could you explain what the PILT payment's about?
So it's an acronym that stands for Payment in Lieu of Taxes, and so it's I don't pretend to understand the formula that's used. I'm just a delivery man, but there's a way that the state figures based on property values a payment that we give to the counties in lieu of the county being able to collect taxes on state-owned properties. So,
thank you.
And the total
you may
is
know more about it
25.
than I do, John, from that standpoint.
I had heard a question in the back, and I thought you could address it. Thank you. It's perfect.
Thank you. We have another question back here.
Hi, I'm the auditor. So they usually just mail this after you come do the presentation, right? Seems like last year the check came before you did the presentation. Or did you
usually brought it in person.
I usually deliver it in person. And last year I think we did have, because we got something got off schedule. It did happen different last year than it has in the past because of the schedule and my ability to get here and when you guys had things. And
yeah, that was probably the only year that's happened.
But typically, I hand deliver the check. So
it's $2,505.35. We appreciate that.
Don't spend it all in one place. Any other questions?
Or is that one of the
Could you bring a big one next time?
Yeah.
No.
Smart.
Regardless of the amount, we appreciate it, and thank you, and we appreciate all you do. In an earlier meeting, we talked about treatments, fuels treatments here on the Parowan front. Is that, and you said that was going to happen this coming summer? Is that still happening?
So there's proposals in the Watershed Restoration Initiative database right now to continue, some of the work that we're doing, kind of the next level up in elevation, kind of between Cedar City and all the way up to Highway 20. We won't know on funding with that until actually they're ranking all the projects today. It'll be in the next month or so that we get that. But I will tell you that the southern region, which Iron County is part of, we usually get about 40% of the funding statewide through WRI. Our partnerships in the southern region, which includes 9 counties, but our partnerships with BLM and Forest Service and counties have set us up very well with getting funding to do habitat work. We do more than any other region in the state, which I'm quite proud of as the regional supervisor here. We get a lot of work done. So
much appreciated. Thank you. Any other questions for Kevin? One in the back, yeah.
I hope I don't embarrass you, Kevin, but I work on the rack with Kevin, and one of the things that he's kind of started this last 4 or 5 months is being more cooperative, or trying to gather relationships with the agriculture community and the sportsmen and pull them together. And it's very much appreciated. I've heard a lot of good comments from the ag people of a little change of direction, and felt like somebody listening, and I think it goes the same way with the sportsman's group. when they can get together rather than butting heads. So appreciate that, Kevin.
And thank you, Mike. And you can embarrass me with compliments anytime. I was wondering where that was going to go, but just a little explanation there. So Mike has set on. We have what's called our Regional Advisory Council, which is our mechanism for gathering public input before we take proposals to the Wildlife Board, which has the ultimate authority to make decisions relative to how we do our work within the state. Mike's been there for 6 years. 8, yeah. He's just finishing his second term and has been a valuable asset on our Regional Advisory Council. So, anything else?
Okay. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. We
Thank you.
appreciate it. Now, item number 2, public comments. And Jan, we're going to have you come up first. And I apologize for embarrassing you. It's hard enough for me to keep track of this agenda, let alone someone that just come in the door. So, anyway.
Well, you got to understand I'm in office.
No, you're
Yes.
good. You're good. I'm sorry. Anyway, glad to have you here, and feel free to make your comment.
Thank you. My wife and I live in Cedar. We own property on Canara Mountain, the upper basin of Canara Mountain, which is serviced by the Iron County Road Commission Department. And we really appreciate those guys. They do a tremendous job. Anyway, that road has been there for 70 or 80 years that I'm personally aware of, and it's been maintained by the Iron County Road Commission, Road Department. The road extends from the north end of the upper basin to the Kolob Reservoir on the south, and last summer a Kolob Land and Cattle Company bought some property along that string, and immediately after they purchased the property, they locked the gates, which prevented public access through that area. We want to go on record of opposing that, and we are appealing to the county commission to use your good offices to help us resolve the problem. So we want to go on record of being opposed to that. Do you have any questions I can answer?
I just have a comment, and we appreciate it. And you and other landowners have been real proactive in this. And we did go up and to cut the lock, and the people were in there, and it was open. So we just took the lock and we notified them that we had done that. And apparently they put one back on, and as soon as the weather clears, so we can get up there, we'll go take that off again. Washington County has the other gate, and they plan to go up and there was early snow or something on their side. And anyway, and they have not removed the lock on that gate, but that's their plan.
Okay.
And we've spoken with Neil Forsyth, our former road superintendent. He was here for 42 years, and he verified that road has been used and maintained by the county for that whole period.
Yes.
And on roads like this that are somewhat remote, we do allow people to close the gate, but they absolutely cannot lock it. So anyway, we appreciate that.
Well, there are gates along the road there, but you can open and close them.
Right.
But, okay. Thank you.
And I did, I've spoken with several other landowners in the area. Just in the last week, I've had a couple of phone calls of the same concern. At the legislature last time I was up there anyway, I met with Victor Iverson, who's a commissioner in Washington County. We talked about this issue, and I believe we're both on the same page as far as the solution, and our job is to maintain those public roads and public access. I don't think we're a fan of closing those off. I speak for both commissions after that conversation. So that's something we're keeping an eye on, and we're going to be proactive about it. So
thank you.
Thank you.
I'm on board too.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Also, there was in the mail, the commission received a letter that echoed Mr. Webster's sentiment on Friday. I'll get that scanned and emailed.
Who is that from?
I don't recall. But yeah, I will get that too.
Yeah, and we appreciate that. We appreciate the public comment on the record, the letters. We'll keep all that together. So you know, if we do get into court with this, we'll have all that that data and that testimony.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you so much.
Also,
Mike.
our county general plan speaks to public access roads that it is the goal to leave them open, maintain them open.
Thank you. Okay, are there other comments from the public? Please state your name.
My name is Brad Green, and I'd like to speak to an issue that I think was originally on the agenda and isn't anymore, which is regarding the short-term rental issue. And you know, I have an opinion on about everything, but I definitely have an opinion on this one. You know, since the 1500s, around about the time of the Magna Carta, the legal ability to profit from your property has been considered to be a basic human right. Yet it seems every time a new idea is born, there seems to be someone who wants to stop that progress or to ensure that government controls it. I think that's anti-progress. It's anti-American, and it's definitely anti-peace. Yet ever since human rights have been valued, it's been part of the social dialogue that you can rent your property. It's interesting, as I was studying this week, I found in August 17th, 1835, there was a group in Kirtland, Ohio that weighed in on the subject of proper government. And I have a record of it in a book called Doctrine and Covenants in section 134. It says, "We believe that no government can exist in peace except such laws are framed and held inviolate as will secure to each individual the free exercise of conscience, the right and control of property, and the protection of life." We've strayed from that as a country, and I worry that we're going to stray from it as a county. You know, short-term rentals are a new concept. Well, they're newer. It's old enough that we have some experience. Most commonly, short-term rentals are a higher class of rentals than long-term rentals. They're more likely to raise home values. For those that fear nuisances like party houses, parking, littering, there's already existing laws that address those issues. Those should be enforced if we care about them. If we don't care about them, they shouldn't be enforced, but I think we care about them. We should enforce them. As far as requiring a license, I have two concerns. I mean, it's simple enough. I have a whole variety of business licenses. It's not that hard. They're not that expensive. But I have two concerns. As soon as you create a license, it makes it easier to create requirements that you have to meet to obtain or to keep your license. It makes it easier to move this ball the wrong direction. The second is there was a state law passed last year that bars counties and cities from requiring a license or a fee for home-based businesses. And while there's some ambiguity on what that means, in my opinion, there are reportedly groups planning lawsuits against cities and counties for violating that state law. I think it's a liability that we don't need, and that the license costs probably won't cover our legal fees to defend it, or even to get, you know, settlement. Lawyers are expensive. As far as the transient room tax, there's already laws and precedent regarding their collection. The taxes already exist and are likely here to stay. I think we should enforce those laws. I think we should enforce all the laws. We should collect the taxes. We should leave it at that. The heavy-handed government is not needed in the marketplace. Leave people the right to control their own property. You, the commission, are the guardians of our community's freedoms and our rights. We elected you to protect us. Please protect us from those who would break the peace by violating our rights and controlling our lives through our property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other public comments? Please come forward. Please state your name again, even though you've been...
My name is Chris Dolan. I'm a resident of Cedar City, and I'm also an appraiser, and I'm coming to present a short presentation, but on a professional level. It's my profession. on the subject in which I'm about to talk about. Mr. Green is correct about the history of the rights of property. It really did come out of a long, long time ago, made it through common law in England. And there was something that in law school, they teach the concept of property and property rights, and they boil it down into some simple concepts, and they call it the bundle of rights. The bundle of rights and is the right of a property owner to be able to sell his property, to be able to purchase a property, be able to use a property, and to be able to rent a property. Each one of those are considered sticks within a property right. And then they break down even further. Mineral rights, rights to pass over your property, a right to be able to access your property. These are all rights as part of the bundle of rights. I was living in a community a number of years ago, and this community was by an elementary school, and the elementary school grounds was used for soccer playing every weekend. And they would have literally dozens of little elementary school kids and their parents taking them to their soccer games. And of course, the parents had cars. And elementary schools really don't have adequate parking for dozens or even hundreds of children and their parents. And so every Saturday, the neighborhood near the elementary school would be choked with cars parking so the kids could go play soccer. And on one particular street, there was a guy who was really incensed because he knew all these cars were going to bring his property values down. And so like a mad junkyard dog, he would be out in his front yard chasing and barking at anybody who even thought about parking in front of his house. And he used the concept that you're going to bring my property values down. And by the end of the afternoon, every Saturday afternoon, all the cars would go away, and these cars never posed any other problem in the neighborhood. And so, and I know this discussion would have been better if I was aware that it had already been taken place in the County Planning Commission. And I wasn't aware it was being discussed, so I didn't bring it to the County Planning Commission, and I apologize for that. But the concept of these short-term rentals, it got to the edge of hysteria in Cedar City. And so when it got this level of hysteria, I decided that I'd throw in my comment once again on a professional level. Does it really impact in a negative way these short-term rentals? Does it really impact in any kind of negative material way that we can measure as an appraiser? And this is what I do. I measure economic impact. It's what I do. So, and the answer is no. It's not measurable. And as Mr. Green brought up, these short-term rentals, they're underneath obligations. If they go through a kind of a website, they're underneath their own contractual obligations to have this property meet at a certain standard, which, by the way, are standards higher than what the city requires or the county requires. The county doesn't have these kinds of standards. And so Mr. Green brought up the fact that it may even impact, and he used the word may, impact adjacent property values because you have a cleaner property. You can go to many places in our county that have no short-term rentals going on because the properties are pretty junky in the nearby neighborhood. And so these short-term rentals aren't successful with junky properties next door. So, and like Mr. Green, it is really a property right issue on the ability to be able to rent your property, whether it's short-term, and maybe short-term rentals, that's the newest and neatest thing on the block to be able to get some rent. But short-term landlords find out if you try to rent to 25 people in your house every single weekend, you're going to find at the end of 4 or 5 months, you got a $10,000 bill to put into your house to get the carpets back up and get all the equipment back in running order. So there's actually a market balancing act in here. So one of the things that a lot of people were concerned about in Cedar City was the quantity of people that are allowed in the house and on a weekend, and how to monitor that. And you know, you can't have X amount of people in your house over a period of time. And and that was one of the things they wanted to govern. And in fact, they put it on the books. They put a government on it. The question is that there really is an economic reason not to. I promise, if you're a landlord and you're throwing 30 people in your house every single weekend, or every 4 or 5 days a week, you are going to have a damaged house. At the end of 9 months, you're going to go, oh, I got to invest $15,000 more to get the house painted, get new carpet in. And then at the end of the day, I really didn't make that much money. So these things have their own kind of balance in it. And it really is a property rights issue. The right to rent. My mother-in-law was 80 years old. She needed to rent her house. We had to get her down here to Cedar City. We had to put her in facilities. She needed her only asset. Her only asset was her property, was her house. And she was in a neighborhood that said, no, you can't rent your house. We don't let you rent your house. This is an 80-year-old woman. What are we supposed to do? We are all, if most of us have one single asset, and that's our house. And it really is very important. It's very important that these rights are really protected. Now, granted, there are offenders of all these rules. There are offenders who can do, can hurt a neighbor in some way. Well, then bring those things forward. We have nuisance laws. We can have these things kind of governed by nuisance laws that are already on the books, but protect our rights of property ownership. An 80-year-old woman, we're all going to be 80 years old one day. We may all need to use our only asset for whatever way we can do it to be able to continue our life and our medical bills or whatever may be in our future. But protect our rights. Protect that stick, whether it's short-term or long-term rentals. Thank you, and that's all I got to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period and go to item 3. Discussion and possible adoption of ordinance 2019-3, disposing of real property. Who was going to speak to this, John?
I will.
Okay, thank you.
Just change here. Okay, so we've had, oh, that's too small. We've had a bit of a history on owning and disposing of property by the county. We've had some concern brought up by Mike Edwards a while ago, and so we kind of stopped disposing of property that had been sold at tax sale out of concern for the law. So I, in response, wrote this very short ordinance that's basically responds to Utah Code 1753-12-5B that says every county shall, by ordinance, define what constitutes a significant parcel of real property and reasonable notice for disposing of significant parcels. And we'd had some discussion as to what significant parcel meant, but basically we, through the discussions, had about landed here, and this is I would say the starting off point of this discussion today. But Iron County defines a significant parcel as required by the code to be a parcel of real property whose assessed value by the Iron County assessor at the time Iron County acquired said parcel to be $10,000 or greater. And then reasonable notice before disposing of a significant parcel, Iron County shall publish in a newspaper of general circulation and the public notice website notice of an opportunity for public comment for at least 14 days. However, as I dug into it, I found, pull this up. On the books, we had Chapter 2.36 of Iron County Code that discusses how the commissioners of Iron County may purchase, receive, hold, sell, lease, convey, or otherwise acquire and dispose of any real or personal property or any interest in such property, subject to the following provisions. And short of reading all these, basically it explains how the commission shall handle the buying and selling of property. But what was never incorporated was what to do with properties that are offered up for auction on tax sale and subsequently not purchased. We have hundreds of these, if not thousands, of these parcels that are even deemed by those who come to auction, to bid at the auction, to not be worth bidding upon. So things like Burl Town Site or Garden Valley Ranchos Unit 5. We actually retain ownership in what are called the campsites, which are these 20 or 40 acre parcels that were divvied out over 1,000 ways. This guy had a get-rich-quick scheme where you would go and win it at an auction or a lottery in Mesquite, and then he would give you title to 1,152nd interest in 20 acres out on the Nevada border. And we've been trying to acquire those. We've been making progress. I don't know if it'll happen in my career, but where we actually own 100% of those. But those are kind of different than significant parcels. And this is, I think, timely given the fact that we're working on maybe disposing of the Fiddler's Canyon building. And so I made some quick edits here. I didn't really change anything. I just added to down here, and you're welcome to kind of read through that section 2.36. But I added these two sections. Real property that is acquired by not being purchased during the May tax sale auction shall be advertised for sale again pursuant to the adhered manner of publication. Said parcels shall be listed, and Iron County shall accept individual offers to purchase said parcels for a period of 2 years for the minimum amount of taxes, penalty, and interest. After said 2-year period, Iron County will accept offers to purchase said parcels for taxes only. So I just wanted to explain where I got that from. In 1987, this land sale policy was adopted, which basically is pretty much, I encapsulated, I hope, verbatim some of the requirements there, the 2-year period, and kind of capturing that. And then that section N, acquired real property not defined as quote-unquote significant parcels, or in other words, or real property whose assessed value by the Iron County assessor at the time Iron County acquired said parcels is less than $10,000 shall be listed together with unsold May tax sale parcels, and offers with the same minimums shall be accepted. So this is really, I don't really feel like this is super refined, other than to say we kind of needed to capture the tax sale part of it for our policy and the significant parcel discussion for our policy. I've got probably about 10 individuals who are interested in purchasing Iron County properties right now that I've put off because we don't really have, Mike didn't feel comfortable with our mechanism, and truly this code didn't capture the tax sale nor the significant parcel discussion. So that's about what I have for you. I hope I've explained it. Any questions?
Dan, please.
Dan.
So, read through all this, and I agree means something there. We've had some near misses on some parcels that could have been a little controversial. They were not sold.
Dan, could you come up to the, and I'm going to actually have a follow-up question for you.
So every May we do the tax sale, and anything that isn't sold reverts to this list that that John is talking about. And we've had a couple of times where we've had somebody come up after the fact, and I get emails all the time. Hey, can you send me a list of the properties that didn't sell? No, they know essentially they can pick them up for taxes. Does this have any sort of, my question was this, does it have any sort of provision on who gets to buy those? Is it first come, first serve?
Yeah, and I guess we should probably clarify that it is first come, first serve.
I think that would be really good, because the one potential near miss we had, a property was bought by an employee here in the courthouse, and some accusations were made, and my office investigated that maybe they had colluded in the bidding process and to not buy them, and then afterwards bought them, and come to find out the person who was making the accusation never bid. He was standing there with his bidder number. I remember it because he didn't bid. And plus we record, by law, I'm actually required, my office is required to record every bid, who bid and what it was. And so we do. The process is a little bit more onerous. We go very, very slow through everything so that we can record each bid. And the property in question was not bought. And then afterwards we had a county employee buy it. And then you had the guy who wanted to buy it but never bid come in and say, oh, there's been collusion.
An accusation of
And
collusion.
as we looked at it, there wasn't collusion. But I'm thinking, besides the argument of collusion, what if he had come in after the fact and our employee had come in after the fact? Who gets to say, who gets to buy it for the taxes amount? And if we had some language in there, I think it would be valuable.
Well, and I think it would be good, too, to maybe even talk about what a bona fide, even for the not significant parcels, what a bona fide offer really means.
Right, and that was the one thing that it did address. It says
It does talk
a
about
qualifying, or it calls it an offer, and I think that now we get into contract law. Once an offer is made and accepted, then now it's a contract.
So the presumption of Section N is that we're talking about not parcels that are not significant, and kind of leaving the rest alone. And maybe we want to revisit it too. Like I say, this was kind of the first stab at it, and so it discusses different types of bidding. If it were to be competitive bidding, you have to advertise for 30 days. If there's a pressing public need, you can kind of circumvent that a little bit.
Well, essentially, we're talking about two different
Correct.
classifications.
Right.
Significant parcels, and in my personal opinion, and I know this gives the commissioners to do whatever, but the more we can put those things out to bid and actually have an auction or a closed bid or an open bid or whatever the process is, the more we're going to avoid any accusations that we've been favoring a party.
Okay.
But it does say, that you can use bidding or you can, or whatever other means the commission desires, that would benefit Iron County. But then we have the second classification that's non-significant parcels and tax sale stuff that doesn't sell, right? So those are the two different things we're talking about, but this would address both essentially, right?
What would be the trigger point when this happens? I mean, and is that advertised very well?
What?
That when it's, when this happens, when you go to sell a...
What do you mean by trigger point, I guess?
Well, I mean, at what point, if it doesn't sell at auction, how long does it have to go before it goes up to where somebody can buy it for the tax?
It takes a few months just to go through the process. There is the transference of title. There's kind of two rounds of deeds that happen after the tax sale.
I have to sign an auditor's deed for each one of those properties, and then that gets recorded at the recorder's office.
Yeah.
Is your office involved in something to do with that?
Yeah, so my office maintains the list, and I prepare the deeds on behalf of the commission when people buy them. We're talking now what has been the process for tax sale parcels that were not bid upon. So to your point, they become available at the time the county takes ownership and the time they get put onto my list.
I mean, it's just the example you used. It concerns me for transparency that, first of all, I'm not sure it'd be wise for a county employee to buy a piece of that.
Yeah.
Because of the inside information. The other is I just would want to make sure it's advertised very well of a deadline. And, you know, I don't know. I
So
mean,
take a step back. In that situation, those are advertised for a month. It's a public auction.
understand that part, yes. I understand that
Okay,
portion.
okay.
But if it doesn't sell at public auction and then later can be bought for the value the tax is owed, how's that advertised? You know, all those. Correct.
And John and I have talked about this, and this was kind of some of the ambiguous nature of this as we discussed it with Mike Edwards, because the code says that we have to advertise all that. Is all the advertising that was done to get them ready for a tax sale, and it's quite onerous, does that still cover a sale that's after the fact because the amount is the same, the parcels are the same? Yeah. They've been published, or does then John have to go through all this, because all of this is expense, and sometimes we're talking about very insignificant parcels that are not worth a lot. It doesn't make a lot of sense to spend a lot of money to sit here and continually publish this
and buy
list.
3 pages of newspaper space.
Right.
Well, and it's like we're having 2 tax sales, really.
Right.
And if you have and if you at some point say, all we're going to collect is the taxes, well, then do you have a bid at that point, and it goes higher than the taxes?
Well, we've already kind of gone through that process, and fair market value is obviously somewhere below taxes and fees. Otherwise, it by definition would have sold at the auction. So unless there's some significant event, there's a gold mine that's found on this property or something, the markets have already said it's not worth. And we get a lot of people. We packed this room. In fact, last time we expanded into the other room across the hall. Market is saying that it's worth less than that. So if somebody then decides to come up and say, yeah, I actually want to buy it for that, they're buying it probably as much as the property is worth. We've already kind of gone through that to find the market rate. A lot of these are just going to sit on the books for a long time and do.
And have. I mean, we'll have hundreds of parcels in, you know, Garden Valley Ranchos or Burl Townside or whatever that have and do so. I mean, they're parcels that it would cost you more to hire a surveyor to find the corners than the property is worth.
And the other thing to point out in John's, the way that this is written up, see, there's a certain number of fees that are added, administrative fees. Each one of these parcels goes through quite the process and takes a lot of our staff time to get them ready. By definition, we've tried to collect taxes for 5 years. They're in their 6th year. We have to go through a process to get them ready for the sale. So some additional fees are added, and I believe the way this is written, that within the first 2 years we would sell it for taxes and fees, which we typically call taxes. I always explain what that means at the auction, and then after 2 years we'd let it go we'd even wipe off the fees and just let it go for taxes if it's more than 2 years old. Is that
taxes only? Which means 5 years of accumulated taxes, but that also means, I mean, some of those have $4 of tax a year. Just
Would that happen at a tax sale when you do these, or
they only
what's
come
the
up
process?
An individual parcel. So say I buy a piece of property and I stop paying taxes on it, and 5 years pass. Nicole goes through her due diligence to say, you know, certified mail and all this to say you are delinquent, and we're going to sell your property on tax sale. We will hire a title company.
We hire actually his name is Schertz.
Roger Schertz.
Roger Schertz comes in and performs a full title search, and notifies, you know, the lien holders and all that stuff.
And so if I fail to remedy that, then it goes up for auction, which Dan oversees. Then if it gets purchased, great. We don't figure, because it's a public auction, that is the fair market value because of whatever the bid price happens.
That's your minimum. That's where you start.
Start at taxes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where you start.
Taxes
the bidding.
include plus fees.
Yes.
That's what we call taxes.
That's your base.
Taxes,
We
penalties.
don't go below that. We don't even try.
Okay.
Right.
So do we add in Roger Schertz?
Yeah, his
that's
fee
part
is part of that. And Nicole spends a significant amount of time and effort, you know, a valiant effort, by the way, tracking people down. And
Plus Christine spends months getting it ready.
I know you do.
Going through Bin, so we even look for relatives, neighbors, go to all extremes because, of course, we absolutely do not want
We are loath to take property.
Especially if there's a
Not in the
home on
business of
the
taking
on the
people's
on the
property.
land.
So to your example then.
share up to the property
Yeah.
with information. I mean, we try to go to all extremes.
So then if it doesn't get bid upon, and this has been the policy since 1987, then it is sold for 2-year period for taxes, penalties, and interest, as it says there. And then after the expiration of the said 2-year period, and then we sell it for real property for taxes only.
Is it, and it's just, you have a deadline, you say Monday morning at 8 o'clock, we're doing this, and then whoever shows up first gets it?
Oh, yeah, that was my question.
Okay.
Is after it's available,
Yeah.
on John's list, and then somebody comes in and says, I want to buy it. And it's not like you have a line,
There's
but
not a
what
bid
happens
on it.
if you had two people that were both
That's my question
interested?
as well. Timing is everything, you know, and when it comes to those, especially after the 2 years where it's just taxes because you don't have the extra fees.
It suddenly gets less expensive.
If it's $4 a year for taxes, it may not be worth Roger's fee. Or the guy, is that the guy's name, Roger?
We definitely don't make money on the process. It's a matter of getting through the. I mean,
Sure. So I mean, as long as you're transparent about when it's available,
Right.
As long as that's somehow available down the road as it goes, as it falls out of the auction section into where somebody has a second chance and it's first come first serve. There needs to be transparency there because timing could be everything. Maybe somebody discovered something.
Right.
Maybe the auction wasn't well attended. I attended an auction of a Stocks building supply once, and it was sleet in like May, and nobody showed up. It was me out there in a parka, and I bought everything for 16 grand. I bought virtually an entire stock.
didn't have competition there, huh?
Because there was only 2 people there, and they didn't have 16 grand. You know, they had like $1,000, and they spent theirs.
Sure.
I bought everything else, and so you never know. I mean, sure, the room is usually full, but timing and transparency. I think that's what everybody's wanting to address. If they
So-
could say, look, it's going to take 3 months after the auction, exactly that day it's available, or maybe you say you don't accept an offer, or you don't accept an offer until it's sat for a week. You know, you maybe notify on the website, hey, there's been an offer for this. The 1 week countdown begins. If somebody else wants to make a bigger offer, you know, they're welcome to try that. I mean, I know banks, when they do short sales, they take the offers and they consider them in the order they appear.
Right.
It seems really inefficient because I've made much higher offers on properties that somebody else got for cheaper because they have to take it one at a time. The county maybe shouldn't fall into that folly. If there's a bigger offer, we should get it. There's a couple of things to consider. Timing, transparency. Thank you.
Just trying to envision how that might.
What if you had a deadline and had people submit a sealed bid or a sealed amount? So if they wanted to go up a little bit, would that?
Well, I would have to track for,
another-
you know, anywhere from 500 to 2,500 parcels, the deadlines. I mean, these didn't get bid upon and have sat on this list often for years. So that would be onerous. Because the first round catches anything that is of value. If it's of value, usually it gets redeemed, and if it's of marginal value, usually it gets bought on the sale. And we have what I affectionately call about 15,000 junk parcels in Iron County.
But I think there's a valid point.
Oh no, yeah.
That at the point by our statute that the fees fall off, now you may have a second round of interested parties that would be interested in those that had just fallen off the 2-year mark.
Okay.
But I hear you. Administratively, it has to make sense if you have 2,500 different clocks running on 2,500 different parcels. Now, granted, your May tax sale, you're going to have, say, there's 100 new parcels that get added to that list. 2 years later, you're going to have those fall off. So every May, whatever, you're going to have the 2 years old that are going to fall off, and you could do one advertisement then, or put it on the website. Put something on the website. There's no cost there, but I don't know. I think that makes sense because now that parcel, literally, the tax is doing maybe $30. And it may not be worth what it was originally advertised at $380, but for $30, somebody may buy it. I don't know.
And I think we actually, I can't remember, but I think we put a minimum on there. But maybe I can't remember. anyway, but I almost wonder too if we could just say a bona fide offer is anything that the clerk receives in writing, whether it be an email or a letter. Oftentimes, there are some that purchase these and kind of have the process down, so they'll not only they'll get the list from us, they'll make they'll write, hey, we want to purchase this one. They'll include a check and the $10 recording fee, and then I mean they'll do the whole thing all at once. So
what if you had a live document that you updated all the time, like Brad said, a spreadsheet where these kind of people that watch these things closely could view that and keep an eye, you know, that way everybody has a right to it. It's a public document on a website that you update all the time. They could keep an eye on it, and the minute it comes up, they first come, first serve. And that, you may clean up a lot of them if it's transparent and what people can see.
What happens if...
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I could write a webpage and do that in an afternoon.
Cindy.
I think that because we've not done anything with these, so there's a big backlog right now, I think you could do something initially and then do what Brad is suggesting going forward. Because right now there's most of those, like you said, 500 are available for that lesser amount.
Right.
Just do some kind of big something on the website and say, Iron County is you know, now able to get rid of some of their surplus property, and do a list of all the parcel numbers or something, and then update it going forward, because right now you've got this big backlog of stuff that we've had basically in inventory for 15 years.
Right. Well, and I don't anticipate that it'll change all that fast. To Dan's point, really, you're only going to have to update it once a year as the 2-year-old stuff falls off and the new stuff comes on, and then as we sell them to strike them off the list.
We'll also have to identify a time that it will have gone through the process in my office to the issuance of the auditor's deed to the recorder's office, and then as it gets to you. That date is going to be significant, that it comes to you and you've now put it in. I guess
you have to identify the date, or do we just say that the published document is what it is?
Yeah.
Only because I've seen,
could watch that
depending on the volume
of
the tax sale, the timing can accordion in or out a little bit. But.
Sure.
Okay. Now I have a question for you. You had brought up, and we had wondered whether this was maybe the wrong sandbox to put this into. But you and Nicole had talked about perhaps being able to have some language to be able to strike off tax.
The conversation is so this was raised with our recent state auditor visit. There was not an audit, the visit. But Seth was asking about our process by which we can write off taxes. And Nicole will tell you that her policy is that she does not write off taxes. But there are scenarios where administratively we need to eliminate cents, dollars and cents, small amounts for different reasons in the collections process in Nicole's office. There's other times where we acquire a parcel. For example, we bought that land right by the Fiddler's building. Carrie right now is sitting on that in my office that has, we bought it, the proration, there's some taxes still owed on that. As you know, we're tax exempt. It doesn't make sense for us to pay taxes to ourselves. So we probably should be able to write off the proportionate share of the year that we own that property tax. We don't really have a method for doing that other than coming to the commission for every one of those things, just like the public would do to come and ask for abatement. And Seth asked, what's your policy? And we actually have a really old policy that's really ambiguous and vague. And so Nicole has pretty much been, unless it's tiny cents, has been bring it to the commission. It would be nice to have a mechanism by which there's a dollar amount, call it under $50 or something like that, or certain scenarios that you don't want to have multiple people have to sign off on it. It could be a commissioner, it could be even the chairman and the auditor and treasurer, it could be auditor and the treasurer, whatever. That we have a mechanism that we can go ahead and write these off administratively as the need arises. We obviously don't want to be in a situation where we're writing off people's taxes that want to come in for abatements. Those things really need to come to the Board of Commissioners. Nor does Nicole want to be in that position that somebody is complaining about their taxes. Well, can't you just write it off? She needs to have the answer, no, I can't. If you want to, you can go through the process of Board of Equalization. You can go approach the commissioners. But if she's given that authority, then now all of a sudden she is the judge, jury, and executioner of when to do that. She doesn't want to be in that situation. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about administrative stuff that's owned by the county, parcels like this, if there's back taxes and stuff like that. So, again, is this the same conversation or is it tangential? I don't know.
Yeah, it's not really disposing of real property, is it?
No. But it deals with county-owned parcels, really.
Right. Well, we need some language on that. And I don't think we're ready to move on this.
I actually
today, but
have
it's
one
been a
more
great
concern I want to
discussion.
bring up, and this was something I just haven't known what to do with, is you have the tax sale parcels. Thank you, Dan. And then there are parcels that people will, rather than have it go on their record of being gone to a tax sale, they'll just deed it to the county. Or we acquire parcels in other ways, if there's a sliver left over, or if there's somebody just wants to write it off or get rid of it, or they realize, hey, this is a junk parcel, I'm just going to deed it to the county. So that group of parcels won't have been advertised for. And so the concern I have, because I like the idea of lumping them together for these non-significant parcels to be able to dispose of them without bringing everything to the commission's attention, because I get quite a few. But I also want to make sure that we are properly transparent. I don't have a suggestion. I wonder if maybe once a year we advertise that group of parcels, but I would hesitate a little bit to not cause confusion. Would we feel like what is published on the website, which I think is a fantastic idea, and that's the language I kind of want to add there, would we consider that sufficient because, hey, it's on the website and everybody has the equal opportunity at it?
I think equal opportunity is very important, and I think simplification is important. We don't want to get too carried away in our nitpicking. And I wonder, though, if we should have first come, first serve, or if we should have 5 days or something, and then we can choose which one we want to go with. If it's high. I don't know if we can do that or not.
I kind of like the sealed bid idea. Then it's. I don't
So
know.
in a scenario maybe where we get more than one, is that what you're?
Yeah, in a scenario where we get
simultaneous. I mean,
it just.
Yeah, because I mean, if you had it in person, I mean, the two guys, what if they walk up the steps, run steps
Right,
together? Who's gonna? And I don't know how often that's going to happen, but still, we should guard against it and have some kind of a policy so we don't have that problem.
I've never had that, but that's definitely a conceivable scenario.
Say, look, it's going for the back taxes, but you're welcome to up it a little bit if you want, and then whoever's highest gets it.
So we could write that in and basically said if two bids are close together, then we'll set the minimum at whatever the minimum was on the spreadsheet, and then give those two individuals till a certain time fixed. But that would be case by case, I think.
Right.
Yeah. And
it may not happen that often, but in those cases where it did, it might be a good way to handle it.
Yeah.
Another thing, and I brought this up before, is it seems like a lot of people don't read the newspaper. Those people that are in the business of watching for these tax sales, they watch it like a hawk,
Yes.
but most people don't.
Right.
And, and Adam Hahn from the Home Builders, he came into city council one night, and I think it's a great idea. Create an Iron County Facebook page,
make a Facebook
and throw some of those announcements on that. It sounds to me like you want to clean up and get rid of some of this stuff. Get it off the books, get it back on the tax records. So maybe use some other avenues to get the word out. And you might have more interest than you think. I just don't think a lot of people are reading the paper as much as
Right. Well, and part of it is we're bound by the law, but like you know, you're trying to insert common sense, which come on.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's arcane and it's expensive.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, we're talking 4 full pages of
Isn't there some bills being run to try to minimize it?
Yeah.
We have to put a delinquent list in the newspaper every year, but just due to the cost and some counties not having a general circulation paper, we can advertise it on our website and send out a delinquent notice to everyone that they did change the law for that. It's just
we're
The
bound.
website's good, and I think a lot more people probably look at the website than they do read the paper. But
yeah, those end of the year lists, they were getting to where they were costing us $10,000.
yeah, and that's
Holy cow!
Right. Okay. Well, I will retool this and maybe bring it back next time. Okay.
Good.
Okay. All right, and I'll include Mike Edwards in the loop.
Sounds good.
Because he actually had he had mentioned to me that he had a draft somewhere, but he couldn't find it. He was going to send to me, so I kind of started from scratch. But anyway, I've included him on this email, and I'll include him on anything.
Do you mind CCing me on that as well?
You got it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
okay. I would entertain a motion to table number 3.
Second.
Okay, so been moving second. I guess no. Go ahead. You better. No, I didn't. I just said I would entertain.
I would move. I would move to table this discussion.
Second.
So moving second that we table discussion regarding adoption of ordinance 2019-3 disposing of real property. Hopefully we'll have new language in time for our first meeting in March, and we can further consider it then. Thank you. Did I ask for a vote?
No, you didn't.
Oh, you didn't.
All in favor?
No.
All
Aye.
in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Sorry.
Okay, no, I'm sorry. Okay, personnel. Adrian, thank you.
Commissioners, I just have 2 new hires that we're requesting approval on. First one is in tourism. We've gone through the interview and selection process and have made a conditional offer to Wyatt Eiler to fill the videographer or graphic designer position. His start date and effective hire date is going to be March 4th, 2019, pending approval. And the next one is a part-time bailiff position that has been extended to Jaron Ford, with him starting today, actually, pending approval.
Okay, any discussion? Need a motion?
I'll move to approve the hire of Wyatt Eiler as a videographer, graphic designer, effective 3/4/19. That's a new approved position, as well as the approval of the new hire of Jaron Ford as a part-time bailiff, effective 2/25/19.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that in the tourism department we approved the new hire Wyatt Eiler as videographer and graphic designer effective 3/4/2019. New approved position, but as we mentioned earlier, there was funds adjusted, and so it's actually not an increase in the budget. In the sheriff's department, approval of new hire Jaron Ford as part-time bailiff effective today. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, this building is officially completed, the remodel. We've taken it off as a every time agenda item. And so anyway, anything that happens from now on is regular maintenance. So anything on prairie dogs for number 1 non-delegated item? That's good. I was glad to hear from Kevin today that they're still working to make things even better. It's been a wonderful period of not having people held up on their building projects. Been wonderful, but hopefully we can get clear to delisting, and just the state will be regulating. Any updates on county boards?
Not for me today.
Okay. Anything else? Seeing nothing, the chair declares this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Here's your check, Dan.
You can beat off a wild animal.
I know a guy that makes those. If you next time we can request that.
You want it to not just be big, but you want it to be big. The amount on there is big. It can be for 1 cent.
I know they love to do this, but I think it's ridiculous. I mean,